I will show you a way of playing Sicilian that doesn't require you to study theory, and it's important for you to know 4 different variations. So we are going to take a look at that. The first variation will be what to do if your opponent plays their pawn to d4. So for the Sicilian, we are playing this move c5, and then we play this move e6 to further support our center, and then of course also we will develop our other pieces on the next move. Here most white players will go for something like d4, and if they play d4 you can always capture. That is the reason why you play c5, to capture this pawn. They will capture back, and now you can play your knight to c6, and this is the beginning position for the Sicilian defense. Here of course in many of these lines white also always has the option of capturing you. If you capture like this, you will lose your right to castle. This is playable, but I wouldn't recommend this. So here of course you can just capture like this, and then in many lines, for example after they play bishop here, you will just have a position like this. It's nice to go with the bishop first here and then the knight, so you can stop this e5 push. And these lines are always pretty easy for black to play. You have a strong center, you can develop your bishop, you can castle. So if they capture you, that's never really a problem. I recommend playing the move a6 early on, because with this e6 and a6 combination, we are stopping so many different plans from white. As you can see, this knight and this bishop already have almost no squares, and we will be able to push d5 early on in many variations. That is also why we play e6. For example here, sometimes they will take, and then push, and that can be annoying. So to prevent this, what I would recommend is to always play your queen to c7 first. And this is known as the Taimanov variation of the Sicilian. And the idea is simple: you develop your queen is on this half open file, and you also have some pressure here on this e5 square. So that makes this push a little bit harder for white to do. For example, a move like bishop e2, knight develops, castles, and I like to go for this bishop e7. Actually, it's a little bit more passive than some other variations you might see, but this is a pretty safe setup from black, and we are mainly trying to be safe rather than sorry by going for all of the active moves. And if white knows what they are doing, they will go for this push with the f4 pawn. That is basically the only way for white to really get an active center and a good position. This is not really a problem. You can always just play d6, of course, because if you do something like castles, it's a little bit annoying to get this pawn into your position. So if you play a move like d6, of course, if they now push, you can always capture. And then if they capture, they are straight up losing a pawn. And if they capture here, you could get a position like this. And of course, here you're also up a pawn. So that is why we play this move d6 early on, to prevent this push from white. Many white players will play a move like bishop here to f3. If they know the Taimanov theory, they might go for something like queen e1, castles, and then queen here, putting some pressure on the king, also putting some pressure here. But in many of those lines, you will just exchange this knight, and then you can play a move like b5. And as you can see, you will have a good position here. For example, a3, bishop develops, and then of course we have the rooks active, the queen active, this bishop active. All of these lines are a lot of fun for black to play. And the main idea with black is just to stop white from really achieving anything too amazing. By going for all of these pawn pushes, we are taking away so many squares, we are developing our own pieces to the right squares and getting active play. Of course, it's also possible white doesn't know the mainline Taimanov theory, and they go for something like bishop f3, which is the most played move. While that's also perfectly fine, you can castle. You have variations like this where they will play the queen up. If they ever capture your knight, don't worry, you can just capture, and as you can see, these pawns are really strong. So if they ever capture, and in the end, if they never capture your knight, I would recommend to capture the knight and then push, for example here, this e5 pawn. Because if you were to push this e5 pawn here, sometimes they can just go back with the knight, and the position is still pretty good for white. But if you eliminate their knight and then you push, now you are basically winning a tempo on this bishop, because this is protected. The bishop has to go back, and here this is already a really amazing position for black. For example, something like bishop here is also really nice. You will be able to develop this rook, develop this bishop, and as you can see, these are all active lines for black, and white basically doesn't really have anything. So this is the second variation we are going to take a look at, and that is what to do if they delay this f4 push. So for example, a position like this is all similar, we have just covered this. And then here, white will just not push this for now. They will make other developing moves like developing the bishops, developing the knight. You can just do your regular set of moves. Here again, white is not pushing, they're playing something like queen d2, castles. And then you will start to realize that if white never goes for this f4 push, they basically don't really have anything too spectacular against your position. Because we have this move b5, this can be a little bit annoying here, so they might play something like a3. Again, you can just develop your bishop here. And most white players will, in the end, choose to play the move f4. Just simply because it's logical for white to play this move and there's not really any other plan. If they really want to, they can always keep delaying it and maybe even play something like f3. But all of these variations are way more passive for white. And as black, you simply have, for example, a move like knight e5, going with the knight to the center, knight here, d5 push, rook in, and all of this is rather amazing. But many players, even if they don't go for the f4 early on, will go for the f4 eventually, for example, in a position like this. Here you can take this knight, but you can also do this annoying pawn push, and then, for example, here develop this bishop to this lovely square, pinning this knight to the queen. d4 is played most of the time, but of course they can also develop the bishop here or play something else. If they do something like this, you can just do your regular moves. The big advantage here is that you can develop the knight earlier, of course, because this push doesn't work. If they play a rather passive position, you can always go for an early d5. And that is also why we play this move e6 at the beginning of the Sicilian Taimanov, because we want to have this d5 push if we can. So against more passive players who don't go for d4, you can always push d5, and d5 is even winning tempo against the bishop. The bishop now has to move. They can move here, or they can move, of course, to b5. You can just have normal development. Sometimes you will get a check on this open file. That's not really a problem. You can just block. Even if they pin you here, we can castle, and we will get a position like this, for example here h6, and these lines are already winning for black actually, because it's hard for white to find any good moves. For example here, even if they take, and then let's just say they take here as well, you can already see black has an amazing center, black has the bishops, so it's black who is the better player in all of these variations. This is the fourth variation that I wanted to show you, just another example of what to do if they go for bishop c4 and they don't play this move d4. So again, a similar setup from us, and here if they don't play out the knight early on, you can even go for a quicker d5 push, winning some tempo against the bishop. The bishop will have to go back. Of course, the bishop can go here or there, it doesn't really matter, and we will still do the same developing moves. If they ever throw in the check, you can always block here. You can also block with this bishop. It's both the same. The most active plan for white in these lines is to go for the early d4 push, but you can always play this move c4, and you can see here we have an amazing central pawn supporting our c4. We have a lot of space. This doesn't really do anything, even if white captures as black and just recapture. You can push this if you want to break the center, or you can even leave this here because there's a really good pawn supporting your center. And if white tries to go for it, of course you can defend with the queen, or you can defend with the bishop. And as you will see, in almost all of these lines, you can use this same methodology. I won't show you every single variation, but the main ideas are pretty simple, and if you know these main ideas, you will be able to find what to play over the board against any setup from white without having to study any of the theory. If you enjoyed this video, definitely subscribe. I also have a top link in description if you want to join my Discord community for chess players, and that's it for this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.